Have you ever stared at the ceiling, heart racing, asking yourself what just happened? Yesterday she held your hand like you were her world. Today she's distant, detached, silent. You gave her everything, your loyalty, your time, your support, and still she left. You're not alone. Men everywhere are trapped in emotional fog because no one ever handed us the manual. Not your father, not your teachers, not society. We were taught to be good, to be kind, to give without expecting, but no one told us that being good isn't enough. By the time we realized the truth, we're already bleeding from wounds we can't explain. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. You thought love was a sanctuary, something that would hold firm if you gave it your all, but she doesn't see it that way. For her, love is not a shelter. It's an investment. And when the return drops, so does the connection. You showed up. You were consistent. You gave her your heart. But what no one tells you is, women don't love unconditionally. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. Her love is not based on your past, on your memories, or even on your devotion. It's based on presence, relevance, direction. Seneca said it best. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. The truth is, the moment she feels your direction fading, your strength weakening, your value plateauing, her emotions begin to detach. You become familiar. Predictable, safe, in her world, rarely equals desired. You wonder why she pulled away when you loved the hardest. But love alone isn't the glue. Your mission is. Your strength is. Your self-respect is. She'll chase a man who moves with purpose even if he loves her less faster, and she'll stay with a man who gives his all but loses his edge. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. So let her think you're cold. Let her think you're distant. What you're really doing is regaining your center, because she doesn't want to lead. Yoshi wants to follow your strength. They say nice guys finish last, but few understand why. You thought kindness was your strength. That patience, generosity, and always being available would eventually make her see you the way you truly are. You became her shoulder, her safe space, the man who never let her down. But she never saw you as the one. Not because you're not enough, but because you became too easy to reach, too expected, too safe, as Seneca once wrote. He who is brave is free. But bravery isn't just about battles, it's about risking. Being misunderstood to uphold your self-worth, you were the man who never interrupted, the one who paid, who waited. And in return, you were thanked, but never chosen, praised, but never pursued, because while you were being the man she said she wanted, she was chasing the man who challenged her soul. Women don't stay where they feel nothing. Even if what you offer is peace. Your stability was admirable, but it didn't awaken her spirit. You became the gentle breeze when she was looking for a storm that knew how to calm itself. She leaned on yes, but she didn't lean in, because you were always there, and what's always there is rarely treasured. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Being good isn't enough. You must be anchored, rooted in standards. Unshaken in truth, you trained her how to see you by tolerating less, by offering more, and by making her comfort your mission. But she didn't need a comforter. She needed a leader. So stop apologizing for drawing lines. Stop waiting for recognition from someone you've already given too much to, because when you begin to reclaim your energy, your time, your power, something shifts. Not in her, in you. And ironically, that's when she starts to see you not the helper but the man. It's not the sweet soul, but the solid presence. It's not the backup plan, but the one she now fears losing. You don't need to change your heart, just protect it better. From the very first glance, she's already decided what you are. Not because she's cruel, but because she's wired to categorize fast. Are you the leader? The emotional sponge? The provider? The placeholder? She doesn't need years to decide. She Needs a moment 10. Most men never recover from that first impression, Epictetus once said. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But many men wait for her to define them instead of declaring their own value first. You listened, you comforted, you were kind, you waited for her attention, her time, her affection, and in doing so, you placed yourself in the category of comfort, not challenge. You became the background noise, not the music that moved her soul. You gave her your full self, without making her earn it, and what comes without effort rarely creates attachment in her eyes. You became safe, predictable. But women don't bond through ease. They bond through elevation, through tension, through the feeling that they had to earn something. It's valuable. And the moment she feels you're already emotionally sold, your value drops. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it, and we waste so much time trying to undo impressions when we should be setting the tone from the beginning." You wanted to be accepted, but you forgot to qualify her. You were waiting to be picked instead of asking, "Is this woman worthy of my peace, my power, my presence?" When she doesn't feel your energy challenge hers, she loses the desire to pursue. She boxes you, not with cruelty, but with certainty, and certainty kills. Mystery, it silences attraction. It makes the story end before it ever truly begins. So what do? You stop auditioning. You stop chasing. You walk in with the energy of a man who knows what he brings and is unafraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align, because your value is not a question. It's a quiet statement. And those who recognize it will never try to reduce it. You thought opening up would bring her closer, that by showing your pain, your fears, your scars, she would see your depth. Instead, she pulled away. Not because she's heartless, but because she felt something shift. You moved from her rock to her project, from the man she leaned on to the one leaning on her, and she didn't sign up to carry that weight. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And a good man doesn't bleed for validation. Bleeds in private, then rises in silence. Vulnerability is not weakness. But vulnerability without structure feels like chaos. And no woman desires chaos she must control. You thought emotional honesty would spark intimacy. But if you share without direction, without anchoring yourself in purpose, stop being the lighthouse and become the shipwreck she fears crashing into, Seneca said. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary. You were suffering at her, hoping she'd rescue you. But she wanted to follow strength. It's not rescue fragility. She can hold space for your truth, but only if you remain composed. It's not about hiding pain. It's about owning it without needing her to fix it. When you expose your wounds, do so with wisdom. Give her clarity, not confusion. Calm, not collapse. Because she doesn't crave your sorrow. She craves your center. Epictetus reminds us, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Don't explain your pain. Transcend it. And when she sees that you still stand tall after breaking, when your frame holds even when the world doesn't, that's when she leans in, not out. It's not the emotion that repels her. It's the dependence. Lead yourself through your storms and let her admire your strength. Not because you never hurt, but because you never stopped walking forward. One day, everything feels right. She's close, responsive, affectionate. Then without warning, she pulls away. It's not entirely just enough to confuse you. She questions your decisions, challenges your authority, withdraws her warmth, and you panic because you think something is wrong, but it's not wrong. It's the test, not a game, not manipulation, but a primal instinct. She needs to know, is this man stable when I'm not? Can he hold frame when I lose mine?
How?
Most men fail not because they're weak, but because they don't understand the nature of the test. They over-explain, overreact, shrink, or shout, all to regain control. But she isn't looking for perfection. She's looking for presence, Epictetus wrote. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In those tense moments, Your reaction reveals everything. When you crumble at her chaos, she feels unsafe. Not physically, but emotionally. She realizes she has to lead. And in leading, she loses attraction. The shift may be silent, a cold text, a delayed kiss, a subtle withdrawal, and you respond with gifts. Words, desperation, but all she wanted to see was your stillness, your calm, your composure, Marcus Aurelius said. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength is not loud. It doesn't chase. It holds. And she feels it deep in her nervous system. The truth is, she will keep testing until she's sure not to break you, but to know. You won't break yourself. To know you won't lose your mission just to gain her mood. So next time she pulls back, don't reach, don't plead, don't prove. Remain centered. Let your presence do the talking. Because when you pass the test with calm certainty, you earn what can't be faked, her trust. And with trust comes peace. Attraction endures. You gave generously, paid for dinners, booked the trips, covered the bills, and at first, she was grateful. But over time, the gratitude faded. Your giving became expected, appreciated. What once lit her eyes now barely moves her. Because in her mind, you stopped. Being a Menand became a source. Seneca warned us, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. When you give endlessly, not from abundance but from need, you create a silent debt, and she feels it. Not in your wallet, but in your energy. You trained her to see your value in what you provide, not in who you are, not in your vision, not in your presence. And the moment the gifts slow down, so does her affection. You told yourself, she loves me for me. But deep down, you felt the shift. She lit up for your gestures, not your soul. Marcus Aurelius said, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. When you think your worth is tied to money, effort, or favors, you enslave your heart to performance. But when you reclaim your giving, when you give with purpose, not to impress, but to uplift, you change the dynamic. She stops seeing you as a provider and starts seeing you as a man with direction. She sees that your generosity is an extension of your power, not a substitute for your presence. Because true giving isn't measured by the amount. It's measured by the intention behind it. So let her earn what you offer, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. When you do, the money, she chased the man who doesn't need to buy love because he already lives in it. She told you she loved you, said she'd never leave, promised you were her everything, and yet her presence turned to distance. Her warmth faded into silence. You clung to her words, while her actions quietly walked away. Epictetus once said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And yet we ignore the truth in her behavior because it hurts to let go of the fantasy. You blamed timing, her stress, her confusion. But deep down you knew the kisses were colder, the conversations shorter. She checked out in phases, and you stayed hoping. But words without action are illusions. And illusions cost more than heartbreak. They cost your self-worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The truth you avoided is now the truth that frees you. She didn't leave because you were unlovable. She left because you stayed too long in a place where love was no longer shown. You gave more to compensate for the emptiness she wouldn't admit. But love doesn't grow from giving more. It grows from mutual effort. Seneca said, a wise man is content with himself. And contentment begins when you stop tolerating inconsistency. When you stop romanticizing potential and start requiring demonstration. You wanted love. But what you accepted was delay, avoidance, and vague promises. Now is the time to stop listening to what she says and start watching what she does. Because the man who honors behavior over fantasy is the man who finally walks in truth and never begs to be loved again. You kept giving time, attention, affection, believing love was a reward for consistency, but you learned too late. Women don't fall for kindness alone. They fall for presence, for energy, for polarity. Not a man who blends in, but one who stands out, Seneca said. He who is brave is free. And bravery in love means setting standards, not just offering support. You were sweet, were stable. You were always there. And in being everything, she felt nothing. Because desire is not born from predictability. It's born from depth, from contrast, from earned intimacy. You became the safe harbor. But she craved the sea. She leaned on you. When others broke, her. She cried on your shoulder. She called you a great guy. But she never chased you, because your love was always guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And if you think loyalty without boundaries will win love, you become invisible, a shadow in her life, not the fire. She didn't mean to use you, but you let her. You trained her to believe your devotion was free. You gave access without demand. Affection without clarity. You were her comfort, not her craving. But that changes now. You don't need to become cold. You need to become clear. Clarity in who you are. Clarity in what you require. Clarity, Titus, in what earns your energy, Epictetus said. Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. When you walk in that clarity, something shifts. She sees the man who doesn't flinch, the man who doesn't wait to be chosen because he's already chosen himself. And in that shift, she finally feels what she couldn't before. Desire, respect, pull. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally made her earn it. You begged to be seen. You waited to be chosen. But now you understand being wanted isn't the same as being respected. You were her backup plan, emotional placeholder, the man she appreciated but never truly desired. And those compliments she gave, they were daggers wrapped in silk. You're such a great guy. I wish I could love you the way you love me. They sounded sweet, but they echoed as rejection. Epictetus once said, you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, because when you begin to draw boundaries, they may not understand.
But it's not their understanding.
You seek its, your alignment. You were the man who always showed up, who always said yes, who bent his schedule around her moods. And in doing so, you became dependable, but not desirable. She didn't have to earn your energy. She just had to ask for it. Seneca reminds us, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. And now you've faced it. You've seen what happens when you give too much to someone who hasn't earned it. Desire is built on distance, on mystery, availability. She doesn't crave a man who is always there. She craves a man who values his path more than her attention. A man who leads, not one who follows her emotions. So stop trying to prove your worth to someone who's already placed you on the shelf. Withdraw not to manipulate, but to honor your value. Let her feel your absence. Marcus Aurelius said, a man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions. And now, your ambition is no longer to win her over. It's to become the kind of man who never has to beg to be loved. The nice guy ends when the Stoic begins. Not colder, but stronger. Not distant, but disciplined. Not reactive, but rooted. And in that transformation, you become unforgettable, not because you chased her, but because you finally chose yourself. You thought being reliable would win her heart, but what you offered in loyalty, she mistook for predictability. You became the man she leaned on, ever the one she longed for. She said you were sweet, understanding, always there, and you believed. Those were compliments, but behind her praise was a quiet truth. She never saw you as the man she couldn't lose, Epictetus wrote. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Her validation, that was never yours to chase. You reshaped yourself to fit. Her needs became emotionally available on demand. But in trying to be everything, you lost the mystery, the edge, the pull. You trained her to expect your presence, not earn it. And what's given freely is rarely cherished. Seneca once said, "Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." And today is the day you stop living for someone else's approval. She doesn't crave a man who always says yes. She craves a man who leads, who speaks with clarity, who draws lines with quiet strength. You thought understanding her emotions would create intimacy. But what she really wanted was a man who could navigate storms without being pulled under. So stop apologizing for your standards. Stop shrinking. It's just to be liked. And stop confusing her comfort with true connection. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Let this be your shift, not into resentment, but into power. She might miss the man who always picked up at 2 but she respect the one who doesn't flinch when she threatens to walk. You don't need to become heartless, just rooted, clear, unshakable. Because the man who knows his worth never has to raise his voice for the world to feel it. You stayed silent not because you were weak, but because you were done explaining. You no longer argued, no longer chased, no longer tried to prove your worth. And in your silence, she noticed at first, she thought you were playing a game. Then, she wondered if you'd found someone else. But eventually, truth hit her. You were finally at peace with, or without her. Marcus Aurelius said, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, that's the power of stillness. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it." She expected tears, calls, desperate messages, but instead, she saw your stillness, and that quiet shook her louder than any scream. Ever could Seneca reminds us. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. She imagined you would break, that you'd wait, but your silence. It became her mirror. In your calm, she saw your strength, and in your distance, she finally saw your value. You see, silence is not withdrawal, it's a statement. It says, I don't beg, I don't chase, I don't plead. It says if you wanted me, you would have acted like it. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You chose dignity. You chose alignment. You chose yourself. Let her wrestle with the silence. Let her feel what it's like to reach and find emptiness, because the man who walks away without anger is the man she'll remember forever. Not because of the noise he made, but because of the silence he left behind.